welcome back. So, like I said in the intro, there's nothing I like better than a cool idea. And when an idea starts, that moment, that energy that comes, it's like, that's just a neat idea. And a neat idea doesn't mean it has to be neat to anyone else. Other people might be like, man, that's kind of lame, or I'm not into that. But it's cool. And then you create energy around that idea, and then you build that idea. And suddenly people who are like maybe kind of neutral on it are like, yeah, that's awesome. And maybe people who are detractors of it are like, no, actually that is really cool. I love the idea of making something that's undeniable from a seed of an idea. And I think that Liquid Death is such a perfect example of that. So like I said in our intro, today we're really lucky to have Steve, who's the vice president of lifestyle marketing at Liquid Death. And he's going to tell us a bit about himself, his journey in the company. And we're just going to talk about how do you take that seed of an idea and really turn it into something that's undeniable. So with that, Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
I know in our intro, I talked a little bit about you. I talked a little bit about the company, but why don't we start with a really simple idea? Tell us about Liquid Death and what you guys create.
Well, if you really think about it, the consumer brands out there that have the most fun, chips, soda, energy drinks are the worst for you. Mm-hmm. And Mike, our founder, Mike Cesario, the first line has always been, Liquid Death is a completely unnecessary approach to bottled water. And that's literally what his line's been. But he is, I'm a Red Bull alumni, so I had a great run there, so I have no beef with that. But let's be honest, energy drinks have a very negative connotation. And I think that when it's like anything, someone sees an opportunity or a industry that's just underserved or hasn't had any sizzle to it at all. Mm-hmm. And if you really think about water, name a brand that's really cool. Name a natural, anything like health food related that's cool. Mm-hmm. Seriously. Mm-hmm. I know you've got the Cliff Bars of the world where they're also trying to be relevant in lifestyle and all that. I get it to a degree. They're sponsoring Coachellas and South by Southwest and their little houses. And that's cool to a degree that they do that. They identify these cool things, but we're more of, all right, let's step back. It's the healthiest thing in the world that you can consume liquid wise. And that the business is just stagnant, not to mention, and this is the biggest point, is I'm embarrassed to say that I didn't realize until I got to Liquid Death how huge this plastic problem is. I'm embarrassed to say that I didn't know what a massive problem for all of us this is. Yeah. And so on that, we're putting our money where our mouth is. And we have 3 charitable partners that we work with. So we actually donate money every month to cleaning up, 2 of the 3 are for cleaning up the ocean, rid of plastic. And the third one is to build actually wells for impoverished nations or areas that need water. It's called the Thirst Project. But that's really the onus in a nutshell. But it's just Mike is an ex-creative director. He'd seen my background, and it was just there's a lot of synergies there because he grew up skateboarding, punk rock. He's from Philly, full sleeve tattoos, whatever. And he and I hit it off like the first day. I think we were on the phone for 3 hours, Yeah. But I kind of take a similar approach. I really get tired of the term disruptor, but there's no doubt we're causing a lot of issues, but not just in the water. We're not just a water brand. We're a brand, Yeah. But we are turning a lot of heads in a lot of industries right now. So that's kind of a long-winded way of what you just kind of asked me.
Yeah, man. And I love it because for me, when Liquid Death first came on my radar, I was like, wait, what is this? Is this water? And I think I heard about it from, I think there's a band on War Records that did a partnership with you guys, or maybe not a partnership, that someone did a Liquid Death something or other on War Records. And I was like, what is Liquid Death? Is it an energy drink? Is it beer? I had no idea. And then I was like, oh, it's water. And I remember as soon as I heard it, it was like a 1-2 punch. I was like, huh. And then I was like, whoa, that's actually brilliant. That's totally cool for the exact reason that you just said. When I go buy a bottle of water, I always have a couple, it's what bottle of water do I care about? Isn't it all exactly the same thing? That's the first thing. So it's well, what am I even getting? And the second is oh man, I hate getting a bottle of water. This sucks. I don't like adding to the problem, but I need a bottle of water. And I had this feeling when I thought about Liquid Death, I was like, yeah, that's pretty sick. That's a neat thing. But I also was like, how do you do that? Because yes, you're selling water, but there is a whole other thing where you're not trying to attach yourself to something that's cool, like attaching yourself to Coachella. You are cool. That you've created a cool brand that other people are drawn to, which is a really distinct difference. But the second part of it is Spencer, who is our podcast producer. He is like the most hydrated person I think I've ever met. He's a highly hydrated person, and like he swears by liquid death like so hard. And we had this discussion about it. I was like, all right, man, like you're a real believer. And when I say he's hydrated, this is a man who loves multiple beverages and he really loves liquid death. So it's like, I got to know more about this company. So can you tell us, I want to get to the whole death to plastic thing in a second for sure. But tell us about that difference between attaching yourself to something cool versus creating something cool. Because for me, you have done the second and done it very well.
Well, first of all, there is thought put into when we do things. I think a lot of times, Mike has an agency background, and I bring that up because at a previous employer, Pabst Blue Ribbon, I didn't for what I was doing, didn't want anything to do with an agency because I feel that there's a total disconnect between a bunch of people sitting around a conference room trying to guess what's cool versus being out in the street, getting dirty, and really working with, whether it be, and I've mentioned this before, tattoo parlors, record stores, skate shops, wherever the cool kids are, right?
Yeah.
But you don't just go there and drop product and then, check a box. You've got to actually live it. And I think that I'm just going to be blunt with you. Like the team that I've assembled here, they're all cool. I mean, they're all, I've got the bass player for Ozzy Osbourne. I've got a pro snowboarder. I've got a pro skater, but they're not sponsored athletes or musicians. They're literally on my team and they're looking at a totally different lens than if I grabbed, and I mean no disrespect, from a major brand that's a recycled person with recycled ideas. Okay, because I myself hold myself to that same standard. I got to keep thinking outside the box. And we're having a meeting next week for the first time since pandemic. Some of the people I've even hired, I've never met before. We're having a team meeting in LA. I cannot wait. And everyone's got to present. I've got a lot of things planning from 2022. But you got to surround yourself with people to get that. And that they talk the talk and walk the walk. So for us to be cool, I'd like to think that a lot of the hobbies or things that we're interested in are the cool things. Is snowboarding, is punk, is metal, is hip hop, the things where art, that stuff, that moves the needle culturally. And that is very important to us. And that's the thing. We all do it. It's not just us, again, checking box in so many brands. How many have gravitated and said, well, we better be in skateboarding, and have utterly failed? Because skateboarding might be the gnarliest buzzsaw of an activity, because if they sniff you're a fake, you are done. You're not only done, you're like never get a second chance. So you really got to think about that. So a lot of thought goes into when you're mentioning the word cool. Like, we're very careful. We're not going to be too cool for someone. We're just going to be like, do our thing. And we'd like to think we're doing it in the right way, but it's from the heart. It's not just faking it. We're not just going through the motions.
Totally. And when you said like, hey, where are the cool kids? Like, what sticks out for me here is we're not talking like, oh, who are the cool kids? Like high school. We're like, no, who are the people who create cool things? Who are the creators? And when we say creators, it's like people who build culture. Like if I think of tattoo shops, or I think about skateboarders, or I think about like punk bands or hip hop or anything, like this is all the backdrop of my life, basically. It's like growing up with this stuff. And part of how I've built my company, it's like we're like a coaching company. That sounds like the stuffiest thing. Like we do corporate coaching and corporate education, but it's not. Like my team is very much as you discussed. Like I've just hired cool people. And again, cool is not like I know how to hang. Like, yeah, there's an element of that, but it's like, are you an interesting person? Like, do you like good stuff? Like, can I drop a quote from the Breakfast Club and you like almost certainly are going to be able to play off of it? Like, do you like interesting things? Are you involved in culture? That matters to me. And like the difference between, I guess, like the thing that I keep hitting on is like, hey, can I attach myself to something that creative people made? Or do I have creative people? Do I have people who are like who are part of culture in here? And what we generate is authentic. It's just natural because I have those people on the team.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I actually saw my team members, and I won't name names, but like, I don't think they'd ever opened a Google Doc before, because whatever they did for their life. But the cool thing is, even the meetings we're having next week, it's going to be very top line. And arguably, these people in your room are some of the top in their game, whatever you want to call it, whatever the profession is. Because I brought in professionals. It's something else. Yeah. But they're giving me a different lens, and they're cool and they don't know it. And people don't realize when you talk to a professional athlete, you talk to a famous musician, a lot of times that's the last thing they want to talk to you about. Is, dude, so how fun was it playing the Budokan in Japan? You know what? I want to talk about fishing. I like to fish. You know that? Yeah. I like to, some of them are a foodie. You didn't know that they're into culinary school. Like, that's great. I love when people are kind of a Swiss Army knife, but you don't know, And so that comes with the interview process, and I can just feel it. And there's times that I'm in my head going, they don't know it. And I'm like, oh, you're going to get this job. Like, you just get it. You get it, and you don't know you get it. And that's what I need versus people come to me and name drop all day long. That feels almost like insecurity to me. It's like you're trying to live off someone else's exhaust. And it's like, no, I need to know what you bring to the table. And I hold myself to that same standard. Every single day, I've got to figure out, how am I going to keep propelling this brand? Be part of, grab an oar, we're on the same boat, right? But I got to steer the ship in a way, So I'm holding myself to the same standard. But I think I've been doing this long enough, you can sniff out the frauds. You can sniff out the sweet talkers and the people that really drop names, whatever. And just because you work for a big corporation, that's almost a big red flag for me, because I need to know what you did to help move that ship, because you can hide in the shadows of those big companies. Trust me. I mean, I know a big footwear company, a big sporting goods company, a big agency, that you can hide in the shadows. And it's like, okay, would their business at all skip a beat if you left? Because that's important to me. Like if you're like a linchpin of what's going on there, I'm not saying I want to deter their business. I want to take you away, but like, if you're that important, like, yeah, I want to see, give me examples of what they're doing, And that's why I constantly keep a list everywhere I've ever worked of all my accomplishments. It's crazy, these Word documents, but I do that. So if anyone wants to ask me, I can reference it.
No, man, I think it's a great practice. So let's go back in time on you. So let's put aside Liquid Death for a second. Where'd you grow up?
Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Okay. So what was your first kind of like thing that you latched onto that would like made you a part of like creating culture? Like what's that first thing where you're like, yes, I love this. I'm going to be a part of this.
My first punk show, I didn't even know what a mosh was. And it was to see the Descendants. And they played the 7th Street entry, which is a little tiny squishy room next to, it's like a fire trap. It's right next to, it's built onto First Avenue, which was made famous by Purple Rain by Prince. And it's this tiny little room, but what's cool, it's the history in there is insane. I mean, Pearl Jam had played in there, I mean, huge name. Even Prince, just for fun, he'd go, do a surprise show. But it was, low ceiling, pardon my English, like asshole to elbow, right? And they kicked into their first song, like I Don't Want to Grow Up, I think it was. And you went nuts, and their shoes flying. People, I got hit in the face, someone went over, and I'm the energy of it. And just even seeing back then, the kids, with the big boots on it and the flannel shirt tied around this ripped white t-shirt, it was just that thing. And I went to private school. So this was like completely other side of the tracks, right?
Yeah.
But the funny thing is the private school I went to had a lot of kids that were really into music. So like early on, I got into the English Beat, The Cure, all these things I was exposed to because of upperclassmen. So it was kind of cool. There was kind of this little, even though we went to private school, I would see them at these shows, And then you kind of learn the etiquette after a while and all that. But that was really one, because with that, you had skaters, right? Snowboarding didn't exist at that point. But even the people you'd see doing, well, I guess graffiti, you would call it at the time. But there was so much in and around that. Just waiting in line in Minneapolis, this is before Ticketmaster, right? Like you're waiting in line, you have to buy a paper ticket. And you're waiting in Minneapolis, and it's 20 below zero. And that's why those places have the big coat checks, because you're like in a snorkel jacket because it's 20 below out. But that was part of the thing. And then you come out of the entry, and everyone would be steaming like they're on fire because it's 20 below out, right? But everything about it, the smells, the sound, I didn't think to wear earplugs, but it was all that. So that's along what I was saying. That was like my first going. That's the first time I saw someone wearing pants that were in the Army.
Yeah. So you get in, you have that first experience, and you're hooked.
Yep.
And then what?
Then what really accelerated it is, what used to be called Northwest Airlines is now Delta Airlines. They're called Northwest Orient, and they would fly directly to Hawaii. And I had relatives in Hawaii, so we would go once a year and go see them. And what accelerated was the fact I just got absolutely enamored with surf culture. Because I'd go over there and get my OP cord shorts that were like, they'd probably be illegal now, they're so short. But those cord, corduroy short. But I have that. I started getting the brands like Lightning Bolt. That's the first time I saw Stussy. That's when Massimo was actually a surf brand. They're not, now, whatever happened to that. But I bring it back to Minnesota, and people were like, that is the coolest print I've ever seen. Or that is the coolest thing. I'm like, isn't this cool? Isn't this cool? It's like I was bringing... that's the brilliance of some of these surf brands. Roxy, for instance, it makes a girl who lives in West Virginia feel like a surfer if she puts it on, Yeah. And it was just that part of it. And same with surf culture. They had a bit of there's the music to it, part of it. They had I guess it'd be an art, but the whole thing of beach, and people always ask, if you'd be a professional athlete, what would you be? I'd be like surfer, bar none. I mean, I don't have to worry about sharks and drowning, but like, have you ever seen where they do the professional surf events? It's like the most beautiful places on the earth. Like J Bay, Tamarua, like all these places. I mean, it's insane. The Maldives. not to mention everyone in the posse is usually very good looking, and they're all eating very well and very healthy. So that was it. But that was something that really was a catalyst for me, being able to be exposed to that. Because if I hadn't experienced that surf culture, and kids are skating, and stuff like that, but that was part of it too.
Yeah. And man, like everything you're saying, like I think it's getting me to think about ads in Trans World or in Thrasher when I was a kid. And I'd look at those and I would just be like Thrasher for me was just like gateway. Like, the music told me all about music, told me about skate culture, like really like it was cool. It was like well done journalism that's based on a culture. And I would get Thrasher in Calgary, Alberta, and it made me feel like I was a part of something. And as if that thing was just outside my front door, even if it was like 30 below in Calgary in January. So that idea of like being able to connect to something and feel like a part of something I think is just such an important part of like whatever you're creating and whatever business you have and whatever brand that you're building. Because so much of that can give people like meaning and community. And it's a super important thing. But let's keep going with you. So you kind of found your thing early in life. What was your first entry into the professional world? What were you doing in your first like real job?
It's kind of a low question. Well, I had a lot of internships and we can talk about this later, but it's taught me where I'm mentoring students now that these internships taught me more than anything what I didn't want to do. Okay. So that led to that. And that's what allegedly led to my landing a job with Airwalk Footwear in the mid-90s. And you gotta remember, speaking of Thrasher, when I go to these, I felt like I got my first skateboard young, and I loved skate shops because they always had cool music playing, people were here, and those Thrashers would be sitting there and the pages would all be bunny and like all bent over and greasy, and everyone paid shit. But if you remember, it came full circle. You go to the back of a Thrasher back then, you would have the first ad of Burton was like advertising in there. There were no dummies, but you could order a snowboard in the back of that. But the other thing was one of my favorite labels of all time, music with those SST records. And that had Husker Du, which is a favorite band. You got to remember, I grew up on Husker Du, Replacements, Soul Asylum. But Soul Asylum was punk. In Minneapolis, there was an amazing music scene. But that all tied it in. I was like, oh my God, I can buy Husker Du album in the back of Thrasher. Even though I could just go down to Northern Lights, which was the record store at the time, and buy it. But that was like, it tied it all into me. I'm like, this is it. Like, cool clothes are in there, skating, the lifestyle, and then the music. But what I did was I had this epiphany that I just knew I couldn't be behind a desk. I'm just not wired that way. And I'm the only one in my family without an MBA. I have my BA, it's not my MBA. And because I just didn't see a need to do any more schooling. I didn't know what would I possibly do that was going to get me where I want to go. And I got to be honest, especially coming from the private school, like after I graduated college, people looked at me like I was kind of crazy. Because most of my friends, at the time, it was, you're going to be a broker or a doctor or a lawyer. That's what you do. And you'll make a good living and you'll go and learn. I couldn't do it. And it was a rough time for me. I got to be honest with you, but it came down to me literally pounding the pavement at trade shows. And I needed someone to give me a chance, and Airwalk gave me a chance. And the rest is history. I got to be honest with you, but I've told this story before. And so if people have heard it, I'm sorry, but it needs to be said because it is a huge learning for me. I was going to be a copywriter. I was taking ads of companies that I really admired and changing their ad and making it funny. I always believed that's how I got through school, and I did pretty well. The professors and teachers, I think, like to look at my papers because at least if it wasn't that great of content, at least it was funny. I make it at. And I picked out brands that I really admired, and there was a brand called SMP that ended up being bought by Ride Snowboards, and they had the old STP logo, but it said SMP, and I was just enamored with them. And they offered me like basically a warehouse job in Chula Vista. And I was really considering it because who would want to be in San Diego? But anyway, Airwalk at that time was in every magazine. They were in Ray Gun, they were in Rolling Stone, they were in name it. And they were doing 2-page spreads too. So I sent all these articles. I found out who the director, VP of marketing was. And I was taught early on by my brother and other people, like, you want to work, you go for the person you want to work for. You don't go through HR. You attack that person. Not literally, but you know what I mean? Barrage. And this is like early dial-up email days, but it was phone. And I basically called, sent letters, all this stuff, and this woman picked up. And I said, hey, it's Steve Nilsen. And she's like, oh, it's you. And I'm like, yeah. And the guy, she goes, kid, she's like, listen, my house just burned down, and I got to go to Europe in like 3 hours. I got no time. All right? Like, maybe we'll catch up sometime. Hang up. And so I sent her a smoke detector in the mail. And she called me back and said, you have balls. Like, and she flew me out for an interview, and I'm not being cocky. I'm just saying, if I've ever gotten an interview of a job I want, I get the job. And I was like, I'm going to nail this job, and the rest is history. But I keep I say that example again and again. Some people may have heard that story before, but I tell my students that I'm mentoring, like, think outside the box. What is going to attract me? Because now the way we've grown as a brand, I'm getting approached every single day by agencies. People want to get hired, athletes, teams. Everyone wants to get sponsored, and that's flattering. I mean, it is beyond flattering. But again, we got to be careful. We don't want to spread ourselves too thin. But you got to prove to me that you are thinking outside the box, that you're going to hustle. And that's really essentially what kicked it off for me. And through that, once I got my foot in the door, I kind of made my way. But I had to prove to them why I need to do what I do. And so I got up the ladder pretty quick over there.
For you, it sounds, and correct me if I'm wrong, like, you learned a lot in your internships, but you said you learned like, hey, I don't want to be like this. I don't want to do that stuff. So when you hit the ground running at Airwalk, you knew what you wanted to do. And I'd imagine you've honed it over the years. But what can you say for yourself and the professional you are now and how you approach things now? What's the big difference or some differences between what you were like to where you are now based on your experience? Are you exactly the same, or have you made any big leaps in your process?
I don't think I've had leaks because I've always been pretty anal retentive and organized. And I've always prided myself with my career that I just don't miss deadlines. I don't. And I think that there's been times where I've been reeled in where, like, Stix, which is my nickname, like, you don't need to jump on the sword. It's cool. It happens. But I believe in like owning it. And so I really don't like it when people say, but I didn't make excuses. Just own it and move on. Okay. I screwed up. Where I learned, that was a big learning, which I took later in my career, was fast forward at Airwalk, I became a snowboard boot developer. So I'd spend 3 weeks a month in Asia building snowboard boots, and I loved it. And I actually took one of my skates, hockey skates, over to the factory and said, this is how boots have to fit. Hockey skates, if the right ones, are the best fitting footwear you can have, right? And I said, so we came up with an L pad and all this other technology. But I remember I was working on our SMU program, special makeup, and our biggest customer was called Gart Sports, and ironically was based out here in Colorado. And we missed the delivery window. Now, it wasn't any one person, it was just a supply chain issue, whatever, okay? Doesn't matter, right? We didn't deliver. The rep at the time was with me, and these guys at Gart's were just licking their chops. They couldn't wait to rip our heads off. Just absolutely just like cage fury, right? Because we were such a big part of their boot business. And he walks in and goes, again, pardon my English, did we fuck you guys or what? And it completely diffused the situation. And he basically just said, how can we we know what the problem is. What do we got to do to make it up? Instead of saying, well, the factory didn't deliver or the ship capsized or whatever. It was like, the boots weren't there and we screwed up. Well, how we can fix it. And that was it, versus just beat us up all you want. Well, we got to make a resolution here, Yeah. And I really learned from that. And you got to hold people accountable. And I think a lot of people, there's a lot of this these days. And that's what I not only make myself do it, but I hold people working for that. Like, you need, like, there's a deadline, you got to meet it, bottom line. But I think that early on, because of some of my counterparts, it didn't, and God bless the way I was raised by my parents, about, treat others, you want to be treated, put a hard day's work in, karma, whatever you want to call it. The people I work with were not doing things that were real appropriate, or they were kind of lazy and kind of masking it. And that just wasn't okay to me. And so I just really I wasn't a place to call people out, but now I am. And I'm like, no, that doesn't happen on my watch. So it was kind of disappointing, because sadly, some of these people ruined it for guys like me, because the higher ups be like, oh, you're just one of those guys just going to snowboard all day, or you're just going to golf all day, because they screwed up for someone like me. And I'm like, no, that's actually not the way I was raised, how I do things. I'm going to over deliver, probably early. But sadly, you get one step forward, two steps back when you're surrounded by people that are sandbaggers. And there's definitely some dead weight. Everywhere for it.
So you mentioned a few times students. So tell us about that.
I'm a mentor at the Lead School of Business at the University of Colorado. And it was something that I have no affiliation with the university, other than I have dear friends that went there. And it's a wonderful place. It's a beautiful place. Man, our campus is insane. I get why everyone wants to go there. And my dad always told me that the most valuable thing you can give someone is your time. I thought that, I've seen kids, especially nowadays, growing up in social media. Someone needs to give some advice here, because it's this ruse almost of what the world's really like. And I want to give knowledge of some, maybe not so much pitfalls, but things to avoid, the things that I learned over time in my career. But I also believe that they need a dose of reality. And in my last call, there's 200 kids on there, and I basically came out of the gate and was like, most jobs suck. You're all graduating. I get most jobs are brutal. And the thing is, all your buddies and girls and friends are going to send their pictures of their toes in the sand somewhere. It's their token vacation for the year, and they're chained to a desk otherwise. They hate it. And even if they say they work at a really cool brand, really do some digging and find out how cool their job really is. Now, there's going to be some that absolutely love maybe working in an agency or lucky enough to get a job at Nike. But on top of that, let's use Nike as an example, just because I have dear friends there. But just because you work at Nike doesn't mean, to be honest with you, like, if you worked at Nike and you're going to come work for me, like, I'm going to dig even deeper on you, because I need someone who can fill out a FedEx form, use a tape gun, book their own travel. Like, none of that happens at Nike, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a reason why Nike's a multi-billion-dollar company. I'm not picking on them, but I'm just saying that there's certain people, I need scrappy people. And on top of that, I need scrappy creative people. Mm-hmm. And so I tell these kids, like, hey, I'll take a look at your resume. What are you interested in doing? I urge any of them that have any kind of debt, do whatever you got to do to pay that off first and foremost. Then think about what you really, really, what your heart wants. But don't set yourself up for failure or disappointment, because it is, to have the career I have has not been all easy, but I also have a certain lifestyle I require, and I made it so on my own. There was no playbook. There was no one to mentor me. Mm-hmm. So I figured, you know what, how can I give back? And so that's why I'm doing it for these students. And I just approved again to do it for another year next year. And hopefully we'll get back to in-person, because I really enjoy that, sitting on the panels. But now, obviously this year, everything has been via Zoom. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, I really enjoy it. And I think that if I ever got to the point where I could retire from meeting, I would do it. I'd love to consult, but I really enjoy helping. I really, really do. And it's not for the wrong reasons. I want to give back, because I've had a great run, and I'd like to share my knowledge and things, and good and bad, that I've gone through. And I just think it's very important.
What's the hardest lesson that you personally have learned professionally? Like the hardest thing that you had to learn?
I think the hardest thing I've learned is to see, and I'm going to use Airwalk as the example. We were pretty much untouchable in the mid-90s as far as a brand, not even outside of footwear. And to see the mismanagement of the brand, and I was not in a position to make change that I know we needed to make, and they weren't listening to me. So by the time my friends and I got in a position of change, it was the ship was pretty much underwater at that point. We were bailing out. We're using teaspoons for the Titanic. I mean, it was just, there was no way. And that was really hard lesson, because I knew it wasn't right. And the other thing is, some of the people were very unscrupulous, like borderline, like unlawful. There was some of the actions they took with our business, and there was no distribution strategy. Just kept, and back to skateboarding, we absolutely 100% screwed over the skate business. We screwed over all those little tiny independent shops that relied on the Airwalk business, because next thing you know, we were in malls. So we paid for all the sins of the big brands that are in malls now. We did. That's why the PacSuns, the Zoomies, all that would have been like, God forbid, 25 years ago, to have no way Volcom would ever be near a mall. Well, now they've got, Zoomy specific jeans probably, So they really did pay for it. And Airwalk's never recovered, ever, to this day. And last I saw, I saw watches like on a table somewhere, like outside of a discount store. It's sad to see a brand that was once mighty. But that would be my biggest disappointment, was just, I was helpless. I would give advice and they just looked down on me. Like, what do you know? I'm like, actually, more than you know, because I'm actually on the street. I am going to shows. I'm around kids. I snowboard, I skateboard. I do all these things, and you're doing the wrong things. Wouldn't listen to me,
So that super hard lesson, how do you apply what you learned from that to your role now?
Well, I think that you really got to be cognizant of business and where your brand sits. And you can't overextend yourself. You don't want to be a mile wide and inch thick. You know what I mean? Like, you want to make sure that you're crossing your T's and dotting your I's. And even down to our t-shirts and things, like the thread, we want to make sure every little bit is dialed. Like, because I was a boot developer, I look at the bar tack on jeans. That's how detail oriented I am. And I think that we really got to be careful. We don't, if they say in the advertising world, you want to jump the shark. Remember the whole thing with, yes. We want to get to that point where we're doing that. And so I'm pretty I'm kind of not the gatekeeper for the brand, because Mike ultimately is, but I'm very hypersensitive to what we're getting involved in, and that's what I'm trying to convey to my team. This is a really good look. This is not a good look, and so that's how I'm every day with Liquid Death, because the growth we're having, with the growth comes more opportunity, but it also comes more opportunists that have the wrong thing in mind. They're looking to hitch their wagon of momentum to keep themselves relevant, maybe. And so I got to look out for those people, because there's some real savvy people out there that are sweet talkers that try to get in your back pocket, but it's not for the right reasons. And I've seen it. I've been there. Unfortunately, they picked the wrong guy to do that, because I will find the skeletons in the closet if they're there, so those are really some learnings right there.
So tell me about your management style. Cause I just want to put it out there, the way that you approach business, I can relate to. I'm real interested in like your management style and how you developed it.
My boss, who I'm going to see tomorrow actually, who hired me at Red Bull, the first two things he said to me, and I just reminded him of this. We just went to dinner a couple weeks ago. He actually left Red Bull, and then he's one of the primary at GoPro. He was there when that blew up, and dear friend. And again, I'm going to see him tomorrow at the GoPro Mountain Games in Vail. Two things he said to me, I think it was really funny. And then there's a third example. He goes, all right, here's the deal. Because I was one of the first 5, sports marketing people at Red Bull. He goes, I'm going to give you a deadline for whatever we're doing. And again, I pardon my English to anyone out there. I don't fucking care what you do. Snowboard, ice skate, just get it done. Just get it by the day. I'm never going to ask you where you are. I'm never going to do it. Just do it. I don't care if you sleep all day. Like, just get it done. All right. Yeah. Secondly, I'm never going to look at your expense report. I'm just going to approve it. So don't fuck me over. So that was 2 things. And then an example was I was trying to sign an athlete, and I live at 8,000 feet in the mountains of Colorado. And he knows right well, like, it snows good at my house. It's going to be good down the road at Loveland Ski Area, which is my home mountain. And it started just nuking on a Monday night. And we had this call. It was going to be the athlete. It was right before X Games. It's going to be the athlete, their agent, their mom, like all of these people, right? And my boss. And he calls me. He goes, Money. I goes, dude, I think we got to change our Tuesday morning call to like 4:00 in the afternoon. And I was like, why? And he goes, dude, I'm looking at the weather right now. He lived in Lake Tahoe. He's like, you're getting hammered. He's like, go ride in the morning. I don't want you at 9 a.m. staring out your window and you're watching it snow. Get it out of your system, and then we'll have the call. I mean, it's like the smartest thing ever. Why wouldn't I want to take a bullet for that guy, right? Because he's basically giving me enough rope to hang myself. So I would like go above and beyond for that guy. And I think anyone who worked for him would do the same. And that's the way with my team now. I've made it very clear to them. If I text you or call you, it's not for fun. Like, I need you to get back to me like immediately, but I don't do it very often. So they're very good about getting back to me. But it's just, I expect that. That's mutual respect there. But I also don't put up with it either. That's not the way it works. And I don't really particularly take joy in this. I'm not a micromanager, but I don't ask very much of you. So this shouldn't be too hard. But it's been very little minute things. But that's essentially how I do it. It's mutual respect here. But you don't want me to start micromanaging, and I won't. I haven't yet. I haven't had to do that. But I'm a very detail-oriented guy, and I keep a pretty gnarly schedule. So be respectful of my time too.
Yeah. So that leads me into a question that Spencer teed up for me in the pre-interview that I've been waiting to ask. Tell me about your anti-bullshit mentality.
Anti-bullshit mentality? Well, for Liquid Death or for me personally?
Both. Well,
I think that for me personally, there's a lot to be said for a firm handshake and eye contact. And I really believe that. And I noticed when I got into action sports, there are all these bros. It's a little bro thing. They all know each other. They all act so cool. But you go to like a formal event, and they don't even know where the salad fork goes. They kind of lock up if they've got to talk in public. Whatever. And they're no longer that cool guy to me. They're like, no, actually, you're very immature. Yeah. And so even being a father of identical twin 16-year-old boys, I still make them write handwritten notes, thank you notes. That's like a lost art. Like, you actually took time to write, who writes anymore, and put a Post-it stamp on it and put it in the mail. And I think that I can sniff through when people try to fake their way through it. That doesn't work with me. I don't know. Maybe I do have a bullshit meter, whatever you want to call it. But even in business, people, as I said to you earlier, are coming at us, but saying, you don't even have to pay me. I just want my logo on your car, on their car, or on my jersey, or on whatever. Like, no, like that. You're basically going and pretending like we have something to do with you when we don't. Like, I mean, I'm flattered by that, but I even had a guy who just sent over an edit this video. It doesn't matter what it is. He said, do you mind if I post this? And I said, absolutely. I have a problem with you posting that, because he's a creative guy. He does photography and film and everything. It's going to look like we hired you, and we didn't. And by the way, that's totally off brand what you did. And I mean, it just shows us that you don't get it. It's kind of like when I was at Pabst, an agency go, we want to work with you. The hipster thing. They use the word hipster. I mean, you use the word hipster around Pabst. That was douche. That was like clown. That was chow. Whatever you want to call it. You never mention that word. Now, you could argue that set of people, whatever you want to define them, really helped revive Pabst. Sure. Maybe it was what we were talking about. Punk rockers, skaters, whoever it is, tattoo artists. But you don't be that literal. You know what I mean? And so for me, I'm curious to see when these guys come at me hard on LinkedIn or whatever, what do they really think of the brand? And it just shows me, are you a brand person or not? Because you just don't get it. Like, just because you just, regurgitated our website doesn't mean you know what the hell you're doing, Yeah. So that's essentially, in a way, what you're saying. How do you sniff that out? And for me, I don't know what it is. It's almost like, people use that term energy. Someone's energy. And I never really understood that till later in life, but you can just sense. I don't know. Let me give you an example. There was a person, and I'm just going to keep this very top line because I'm not the type of person that ever speaks bad of someone. There was someone that wanted to get hired, and they talked a huge game, and people interviewed him, and I wasn't feeling right in my gut. It just wasn't, and I'm a firm believer you got to follow your gut. I did some research and found out this person basically embezzled from a company, got canned, and no one bothered to do any background check. I could sniff it out. I knew something wasn't right, and I had to do some deep digging because no one wanted to throw this guy under the bus. And I was like, this isn't right. This is right. And the best part is, this dude literally tried to turn it on me that I'm mean and I'm a jerk. I had it out for him. No, I actually just have it out for people who lie. Who embezzle. I don't know. Last I checked, that's not a good thing. So that was it. My gut talking to, and it was again typical fast walker dropping names. If you have to drop names to me, then it's kind of like my biggest gripe with Instagram is when I see people that at one point did work for Vans and I'm happy for them, but they keep posting their team trip to Chile in 2015, but they've been unemployed for how long? It's like, dude, that was great. You keep posting what you did. What have you done now? That's what I need to know. I know you have this experience. I get it. But that was 2015. TikTok doesn't around then. There was things that, so I really appreciate it when people have this good experience. What else have you done to evolve yourself? Not only as a person, but your business. And I need to know that. And I will ask a lot about that.
Yeah, totally. All right. So let's shift back into liquid death. Talk to me about the slogan, death to plastic.
Mike is really the one. Again, I give him all the credit in the world. But back to earlier in our conversation, people realize what a massive problem this is. I don't have the exact percentages right here. So don't, I'd have to go back and look at it. But I believe it's 70% of the aluminum, and I apologize, one of my families learned the text, is still in circulation from the late 1800s, right? So aluminum just keeps getting recycled. Plastic, on the other hand, and again, I don't know the exact number. I believe it's 10% of the single-use plastic has been recycled in 40 years.
What?
Yeah, it's insane. That could be off a bit, but it's an insane number. There's no comparison to aluminum, right? And so this literally is a problem that needs to be addressed, you could have too much water and die. You could have too little water and die, right? But liquid death, the other thing is I get a kick out of when people go, but I was talking to a Christian rock festival the other day, and they were really good-hearted. I was not patronizing them whatsoever, and they were actually really laughing. But I'm like, the good Lord wants you to use aluminum. They don't want you pollution anymore. Oh, it's plastic. And they're they started laughing, whatever. And I was trying not to patronize them, but I'm like, so when I talk to them, I'm like, you do realize that cap is just big enough to choke a dolphin's blowhole, right? Even though it's a festival that's in middle America. But it's a thing where we're really trying to bring this to the forefront, and it's a conversation piece. Even a can alone for someone who's sober, someone who doesn't drink, they're out at night, they have this can in their hand. It's they're more part of the group, the psychology of it. They're more part of the group because you have that glass of the lime in it. It could be a vodka soda, or it could be that. There's nothing wrong with it, but there's something for people and then youth. I mean, kids think and I mentioned this to Spencer when he spoke with me before, that they think they're doing something naughty, And so I've had parents literally just happened again today. I was on the phone, soccer mom. She goes, my child will not go to school without that can in their lunchbox. They walk around school and everything else, and it's they feel like they're doing something naughty, but they think they're adulting, but they want to drink. They want to hydrate. Who would have thought that? And that's another thing. The amount of people that come to me and said, I've never drank enough water. I don't drink enough water. And I'm like Spencer, I'm oral fixated. I'm always having something in my hand. But I, to bring that to the forefront of this death to plastic, well, we really got to do this because I'm not saying it's insurmountable, but it's really bad. And to bring eyes to that, which is why, I don't know if you saw Living Homes for Plastic, with the campaign that we did. Did you hear about this?
No, I was about to ask about it. So could you tell us about it?
Yeah. So basically, two of the biggest polluters are big soda companies. And we basically made prepaid postage because people don't realize also that you can mail, in the United States anyway, you can literally mail a coconut. You can literally put stamps on a coconut and they'll ship it back. So the idea is these big polluters.
Why would people realize that? How many people are out there trying experiments with what you can mail?
Mike sent that out. It's hilarious. We showed a picture of that. But basically, you can take this prepaid postage and it has the address of these polluters on there, and it'll be mailed back to their headquarters.
And so you are getting people to mail back their cans or their bottles. Yeah.
not cans, but just plastic.
Just bottles. Yeah.
Buying loving homes for plastic. If you're going to like trash around, like here, take it back. It's yours. It's that recyclable, you know?
And did people do it?
No, I haven't. We're probably going to do like kind of a full scrub on that and see what kind of, you know, how many we moved of those labels. But more than anything else, it got people talking. Why? Because plastic's a huge problem. And what is Liquid Death going to do about it? I think you've got to remember that. We do have this cause, you know, with working with these nonprofits, but we are not just talking. And a lot of people, back to what you're saying about sniffing out the fake, the bullshit, they talk. But it's like, what are you doing though? Like, you've got to do something. A lot of people love to be like yap, yap, yap. But are they really acting? And we're going, you know what? Now I'm going to donate to these companies, Pangea Seed and 5 years who work on ocean conservation. We're going to actually like help the cause by, you know, we'll eat the postage to get these to send back to the big guys and see what they come, you know, poke the bear, so to speak.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, and just to go to what you said there, like, I mean, anyone who's on LinkedIn or is in the world at all, you know how corporations glom onto whatever social thing has crossed the line from being, oh, we wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole to, oh, if we touch that now, it's going to get us business. So it's like, you know, all these corporations that maybe 10 or 20 years ago would never support Pride Day or Pride Month or Pride Week, but now are all rainbow flag. It's like, hey, I appreciate that it's being done. Like, I love to see the support of that community. And oh, you're only doing that because you view it as like a marketing gimmick to get more business. And I don't want to say they only do that, because of course the people who were making decisions 20 years ago probably aren't the same people making decisions today. So companies change, they grow. But I'd say like a real difference when you're talking about that campaign you did, that it gets people talking, but also it's kind of like, no, I'm going to use some sharp elbows here to get you to draw attention to your own stuff. Like, let's actually have that discussion, and you're going to say all the right things if I try and have the discussion with you in a traditional way. So let's try and have the conversation in a different way. And also it's like kind of creates a buzz. I like that. I think it's a neat idea. That idea of getting businesses to change. If we just do the same game, they're just going to play the same playbook. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, you nailed it. I really don't do well when people just go through the motions. Like, they feel like they just kind of have to do that. And in any of the movements that are happening or things, and I agree with you. I think it is good that they're acknowledging it, but it really's got to have some heart behind it versus just checking a box. I'm all my to-do lists every day, but I'm not into just checking a box to do it. You know, to do it. I see corporations. I was at Winter X Games, and there was a major mobile carrier, and I met the director of marketing, and this person, you could tell, just had no idea what they were even doing there, why they were there. But they had their token banner, check, on the side of the half pipe. They had their tent, check. They all were wearing Columbia vests with the name of the check, which no one in action sports is going to gravitate. Plus, I doubt they signed up any plans being there. But I'm sure when they did the presentation in Chicago to show the higher ups and to, you know, that they check boxes, like we did that. But I don't think anyone did a deep dive. Like, did we really like enhance this phone carrier brand by doing that? To me, it was someone sitting in a rock going, you know, we need to be part of action sports. Just like you said, any of these movements, we need to be a part of it. Great. Okay. That's step one. What are you really going to do? Flush out a program, a plan, an activation to do this. And is it scalable? You know, because oftentimes a lot of what I do, again, it's hypocritical. Most of my career has been very hard to scale. So people understand marketing, know that it's building brand equity, you know? So if I have to go head to head with CFOs, which I do, and not in a bad way, I'm like, they're like, you spent what on the amount of samples you're giving out? I said, yeah, I gave away thousands of cases. But do you know how many people posted for us without me asking? Because they're just enamored with the can. And I don't have to ask them, you know? But did that lead us selling more cans? Probably. But I could never say how many, you know? And there's some people that don't get it. And that's why I don't work with some of those people, because I've definitely been in situations where I explain what I do and it's just crickets. They're like, I don't get it, you know, at all. And I had someone, which has been a very motivating factor for me, say to me, to my face, what you do is soft metrics, is what he said to me. And I was like, you don't get it. Like, I'm in my head. You don't get it. Like, if you're saying that soft metrics, because I'd like to think, and I can say this at this point now, just check my track record. Check my track record. Have you seen anything I've done where we haven't gone up? Just saying. Like, I took my licks at Airwalk on how not to do business, which was my MBA, on how not to do business. And I am like now hypersensitive to not screwing up a good thing. So the fortunate thing is I've been in the driver's seat now and in certain ways, in different capacities of these brands. And I've surrounded myself, not by me, some have been my hires, others have just been luck of the draw, where I've surrounded with really good people that believe in the common theme. And that is dangerous. If you've got a bunch of people who believe in what you're doing, it's pretty, I mean, look at the real successful brands out there. They drink the Kool-Aid, so to speak, and they're pretty gnarly. Like, look how successful the biggest brands are, the Apples of the world. I mean, I can't speak to Amazon because that's a whole beast on its own, but like the Apples of the Nikes of the world, the Virgins of the world, like, those names keep coming up, There's a reason why that's successful. And you talk to people who work there, you very rarely say, yeah, I mean, Apple, this sucks. Nike that blows. You have somewhat better experiences than others. But man, there's people who in those departments, I mean, you can't tell me that the Nike basketball, for instance, I mean, can you imagine the amount of energy in there and like those guys all commenting what they're doing? And, you can do a lot of damage. You got people believing what you're doing, and that's my job is to like keep the scope going, so to speak, but getting the right pieces of the puzzle in here. So we have this common, we keep going. And that's where we are now. I feel like it's like Braveheart. We're all kind of marching and going, we're going, you know what I mean? And we're like all pumped to be there. We all believe in what we're doing. And come at me, bro, as they say, And it's dangerous, man. You got a common, it's David and Goliath in a way.
I love it. All right. I got 2 questions for you as we're closing off. Actually, I got 3. For you as in your role today, not as Liquid Death, not as a company, but you as a leader, how do you define success for yourself?
I actually define the success when I see these visions or plans that I have come to fruition, but a rising tide raises all boats. And if I know that I have something and people are, again, on either side, so to speak, in formation, like that to me is success. When you see that, when people are talking about it, going, I remember that, I do that, when there's that moment, so to speak, that to me is success, because people are like, you have a crew that believes in you, that's first and foremost. And then you convey that to the public, whatever it is, consumers, and they're like, I get it. Like that makes sense. Okay. So that to me is success.
All right. Question number 2. Top 3, and listen, this could change tomorrow for you. It could change next week for you, so I won't hold you to this. Today, what are your top 3 punk records from Minneapolis of all time?
Punk rockers from Minneapolis?
Punk records.
Oh, punk records. I love Husker Du, Metal Circus. I love Soul Asylum, Hang Time. And it's a tough one with the replacements. It's either going to be Stink, which is the EP, or, oh God, sorry, Mom, take out the trash. Forget to take out the trash. That's probably the 3 right there, because those are pretty raw. Soul Asylum, again, as we know, got a little more poppy as they got older. That's fine. Everyone did. So Husker Du, unfortunately, went away before they should have. And then the replacements is just, they were always a train wreck. But Paul Westbrook can write a good lick, So I would say those. But that Husker Du is definitely top. Those guys, they were so loud and so good. And it's a shame that those kids these days will never even know. I mean, a lot of kids these days obviously weren't even born when Nirvana was around, much less Husker Du.
Well, I think there's a big resurgence in awareness of Husker Du. There's a podcast called Nothing to Do that's pretty good. Yeah. And when you hit those 3, Patrick was on the other side of the computer nodding in heavy approval. So the youth is with you, is all I have to say. And Spencer was probably drinking some kind of beverage. We don't know. All right. Final question for you, man. As we are closing off, this has been a super cool interview, and you can speak to a lot of things with really great depth. If you're thinking about our audience comes from all different backgrounds. We've got people from like the punk and hardcore scenes. We've got people from the corporate world. We have artists. We have musicians who listen to this, but they all come to the podcast for one reason. And that reason is to learn about leadership. Like, what does it mean to be a leader? And it could be a leader in business. It could be a leader in community. It could be a leader in your own life. So if you're thinking about leadership and your own path along here, is there anything that you want to share with the audience about leadership from your perspective?
For me, I tell my students that I'm standing out because I did what I say I'm going to do. That is a pathetic state of affairs now. If I stand out because I did what I say I'm going to do, because a lot of the world, whether it be in entertainment, in exports, they always say, I got you, I'll call you, I'll do whatever. It's pretty straightforward. Treat others as you want to be treated, right? And my favorite saying is never look down on someone unless you're there to help them up. That's it. That's pretty elementary, right? If we all did that, we'd be in a better place, right? But just do what you say you're going to do. Firm handshake, look someone in the eye. If you say you can't do it, just admit you can't do it. Just say it. Don't promise the world and under-deliver, right? I always, and you don't want to sandbag anything, but you want to like under-promise, over-deliver, right? But I unfortunately, I think that's lost. this day and age. I think there's a lot of lip service and very little follow through. If I'm going to stand out because of it, fine. I'm never going to change the way I do business. But if you're going to say, I believe in leading by example, I guess. Does it follow me? Like, I hope to learn from people that I hire. Trust me, I'm a sponge. Like, I read a lot. I love to listen. I'm actually a pretty good listener for as fast as I talk. My mother always said, I watched her tell my brother, let the other person speak. And that always resonated with me. Like, just listen. There's not enough listeners in the world. There aren't. Everyone wants to be heard, right? Mm-hmm. And so if that by default is the leadership, yes, then I am, But I firmly believe in it. It's pretty simple principles in just life in general. Just being respectful of people, you know what I mean? Being polite, being thoughtful and acknowledging when someone else does something good. Acknowledge, because there's too many people who are too proud to do that. They're jealous, whatever else. Be happy for them, but don't be fake about it. I mean, if it's not a good idea, and there's just not enough of that. And again, none of this is rocket science, what I'm telling you here. Nothing here is I'm breaking new ground. I just believe that you encapsulate all that, good things will happen, So that's essentially how I live my days.
Yeah. Well, I love it, man. Listen, thank you so much for being on the show. I came in thinking we were going to have one kind of conversation, and it went into a totally different dimension, which for me is like my favorite kinds of conversations, where I get to just see a whole different dimension of someone. And of course, we've never met before or even spoken before. So this was really, really cool. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much for being on.
I really appreciate you having me. Thank you guys. Seriously.
You bet. Okay, everyone, we'll see you in the outro. And until then, Spencer, drop the beat.